We're hunting rattlesnakes all over America to settle a decades-old debate. What is actually the most dangerous snake in the country?
And to do that, we need to find as many rattlesnakes as possible, compare them head to head, and see who comes out on top.
Rattlesnakes kill more people than any other kind of snake in the US, so the most dangerous has to be one of them. But there's more to danger than what you can measure in a lab. We need to track them all down in the wild to test how likely you are to see them and how they react when you do. My name is Harrison, and this is my twin brother, Evan. We're on a mission to document all the animals on Earth while we still can, and we're starting by cataloging all the most dangerous ones. We've come to Arizona, the rattlesnake hotspot of America, to put as many species as we can through the danger scoring system we're developing. We have 3 criteria: toxicity, temperament, and encounter rate. And there's no better place to start than with this country's most venomous snake.
This is the tiger rattlesnake, the most venomous rattlesnake in the world. They have an LD50 of 0.06. That is unbelievably low. It's a highly potent neurotoxic and myotoxic venom that attacks your central nervous system and breaks down your tissues. Now, just because these snakes have an incredibly toxic venom doesn't mean that they want to use it on us. These snakes are known to be rather reactive when they're disturbed, and they can move explosively if they feel that they need to. But bites are incredibly rare, and despite that incredibly potent venom, the tiger rattlesnake has never actually killed anyone because their venom yield is very low, only about 10 milligrams at a maximum. And that's because, as you can see, their head is quite small. They don't have very much venom to begin with.
Since they're the most venomous rattlesnake in the world, you might think that that's kind of the end of this discussion. The most venomous snake is the most dangerous one. But that's not quite it. With venom, it's really the dosage that makes the poison, but that's only relevant after you've already been bitten. When it comes to toxicity, this is where tiger rattlesnakes score big. With the most potent snake venom in the US, it's hard to argue that they don't deserve full marks for toxicity, even with a tiny venom yield, so we have rated them a 10. Now, as far as temperament, the individuals that we saw were definitely more inclined to flee than strike, and we only saw the inside of a tiger rattlesnake's mouth once on our entire trip. So for that reason, we give them a score of 4 for temperament. Now, these are very habitat-specific snakes, and they're living out in more remote desert habitats like rocky canyons where people aren't developing often and really aren't exploring too frequently either. And when you consider the fact that they bite very few people and they've never killed anyone, it feels fair to give them a 3 for encounter rate. So overall, given extreme toxicity but mild temperament and pretty low encounter rate, we've given the tiger rattlesnake an overall danger score of 17. But what happens when you have a snake that isn't as toxic but has way more venom and is a lot more common?
There it is, our lifer black-tailed rattlesnake, a species that I really wanted to get for this mission because they are known to be probably the calmest of all the rattlesnakes you can encounter. Oftentimes when people run across these snakes, they're not even gonna rattle. This snake has been remarkably relaxed, not one attempt to rattle or strike or really show me any defensiveness, but they have a moderately potent venom and it's hemotoxic, so it attacks your blood and your tissues. And if you take it, you are going straight to the hospital. But this is something I've been wondering about ever since we started researching for this video. What is the real temperament of a black-tailed like? And I would say it is just about as calm as any snake I've worked with. But this is never something to attempt, nor something you'll see us do with any other snake on this mission. It's only because blacktails are known to be so calm that we can take certain liberties that you should never, ever try. Rattlesnakes are not monsters. They're not out to hurt us. You can see, as soon as I put him down, he wants nothing to do with us.
The reason I went to such an extreme with this handling test is to prove the attitude of a snake and how it reacts to people is a huge factor in determining how dangerous it actually is. Because if you look at the black-tailed rattlesnake from just a venom perspective, they seem pretty deadly. They have a moderate toxicity. Their LD50 is 3.3 milligrams per kilogram, and they have a very high venom yield, about 200 to 300 milligrams on average. So even with less toxic venom than other rattlesnakes, the yield that they they put out is more than enough to kill a human with a single bite, so we've given them a score of 6 for toxicity. But where blacktails really stand out is their temperament. It's pretty commonly reported that blacktails are among the most relaxed of the rattlesnakes. And we've seen that in our own personal experience and from the testimonies of our friends that have worked with these snakes as well. They are active and kind of squirmy in hand, but we never had one individual try and bite us, even when we were handling it very liberally. So we've rated them a 2 for attitude. When it comes to encounter rate, blacktails are pretty findable in the right habitats, so that, paired with the fact that there are a fair few number of iNaturalist observations, over 2,000, we gave them an encounter rate score of 6. Attitude is something that often gets overlooked in conversations like this, but oftentimes it can be the deciding factor in how an interaction with a snake goes. So we've given the black-tailed rattlesnake an overall danger score of 14. But when it comes to interactions with rattlesnakes, one of the most important things to consider is how often you're going to be running into it in the first place, because some rattlesnakes in the US are much rarer than others.
This is the Arizona black rattlesnake. Now he's calming down a tiny bit, but when we first flipped him, he was being very defensive. They're quite twitchy snakes. He gave me a few open-mouthed strikes as well, and you can see he's posturing up right now. He's very reactive, following every move I make. This is a very small Arizona black rattlesnake as they come. They get quite large, and because they get so big, they have a lot of venom, and it's very potent. Their venom is hemotoxic. There are very few recorded bites from Arizona black rattlesnakes, but because they're very defensive and people don't often see them because their camouflage is so good, there are a few bites on record. The thing about Arizona black rattlesnakes is people don't come across them very often. They're mostly restricted to the mountain habitats here in Arizona. This is a rare rattlesnake to see, not something we expected at all.
You may have never heard of this species before, and I wouldn't blame you, because they're not super common to see, but it would be a very bad bite. The toxicity is moderate. They have an LD50 of 2.5 to 6, but a relatively high yield of around 112 to 150 milligrams. There's not as much research about their venom as there is with many other rattlesnakes, so some of the numbers are a bit inconclusive at the moment. But generally, we do understand that a single bite could be deadly, so overall we've given them a toxicity score of 5. Now, for their attitude score, the individual we found was quite defensive. He actually struck at us multiple times as well, even well after we found him. Now, we should note that their temperament will vary by individual, and we've heard from other herpers that they've encountered Arizona black rattlesnakes that were pretty placid and didn't give them any defensiveness whatsoever. So because of that, we gave them a temperament score of 6 overall. But the Arizona black rattlesnake is a really good example of why encounter rate is so important to this debate. Because there are very few bites on record and no confirmed deaths, and the only place where they're frequently encountered at all are in particular wooded mountain habitats that people don't tend to build in too often. There are less than 1,000 observations of them on iNat, so their final score for encounter rate is only a 3. That brings the final danger score for the Arizona black rattlesnake to 14. But in order to find out what the most dangerous snake in America really is, we need to zoom out a bit and look at which species are the most dangerous in the area that you live.
Every region in the US has its own contender for the snake that poses the biggest threat to people. On the West Coast, it's a member of the Western rattlesnake species complex, either the Northern Pacific rattlesnake or Southern Pacific rattlesnake, depending on where you are. For the Northwest, it goes to the prairie rattlesnake, which causes a ton of bites throughout their range. In the Southwest, where we spent most of this mission, there's really no contest at all, though we'll get to that later. But for basically the other half of the country, from the Midwest all the way to the East Coast, there's only one answer for what snake you need to worry about most.
Check this guy out. That right there is the timber rattlesnake, one of the most recognizable snakes in all of the United States because of that sound right there. Their rattle is an unmistakable defense mechanism that tells anything that gets too close that that is a deadly, venomous animal that you need to keep your distance from. But really, the only reason that defense that gives his position away so easily works for him is because he is packing such a deadly chemical defense.
Timbers are the perfect example of how successful these adaptations have made rattlesnakes, because they're found in over half of US states and a ton of different ecosystems. But that means they cause a lot of conflict with humans. Their venom is highly toxic, with an LD50 of 1.64 milligrams per kilogram. And because they get pretty large, they also have a large venom yield, between 100 and 200 milligrams on average. Now, one of the things that makes their venom stand out is that it's highly variable. Different populations around the country will have very different venom chemistry. The venom is generally hemotoxic, but there are populations that have myotoxic and even neurotoxic components in it as well. So the response in the human body is going to be very different. So that does bump their toxicity score up to a 7. Their temperament is kind of average. They're the rattlesnake that we have the most experience working with, so we kind of use them as our standard when assigning these temperament scores. Oftentimes we see them rely on their camouflage much more than posturing or striking, and even when they do get defensive, they don't stay that way for very long. They calm down and stop rattling after a bit. So for their temperament score, we gave them a 5. Now moving on to encounter rate, timbers are pretty notable. They have the largest range of any rattlesnake in the country. In the right areas, they are very abundant. We have at least 15 well-reported deaths from timber rattlesnakes in the wild, with over 12,000 observations on iNaturalist, hundreds and hundreds of historical accounts of these snakes causing fatal bites. We have to give them an encounter rate score of 7. So with all of those factors in mind, we give the timber rattlesnake a final danger score of 19. But you'll see that things work out differently for other species, because their story is basically the exact opposite of the timbers.
Right behind me, we have something very special, a baby banded rock rattlesnake just sitting out on this rock here. Certainly not giving us any defensiveness, but that's because we're not gonna get any closer than this. This is our lifer. It's very exciting for us, and this is not a very common species to encounter at all. People almost never see these rattlesnakes because they're only found up in mountainous habitats in the Sky Islands here in Arizona. So it's certainly not something you'd ever see around human structures. They're not moving into people's backyards or anything like that. And they're not particularly defensive either. They're hemotoxic, and they're mostly using it to hunt their prey.
In fact, that's what venom does for all venomous snakes. It's primarily a tool that they use to catch and digest their prey. Banded rock rattlesnakes have both hemotoxic and neurotoxic venom, depending on the population. The neurotoxic populations have an LD50 of 0.63, and the non-neurotoxic population is nothing to scoff at either. Their LD50 is about 2.6. Now, what brings their score down a bit is the fact that the rock rattlesnake has a tiny venom yield, somewhere between 13 and 30 milligrams on average. So with that tiny yield, we have to give them an overall toxicity score of 6. Now, temperament is where rock rattlesnakes lose a little bit of ground in the scoring, because they're generally known to be very shy and not likely to bite. And more often than not, they're going to rely on their camouflage as their main defense rather than striking. Even though the one we saw was young and really exposed, it didn't seem to mind us at all and gave us no defensiveness even as we got pretty close to film. So overall, we give them a pretty modest temperament score of just a 3. As for their encounter rate, they do cause a few bites, but not many, about 5 to maybe 10 overall in the record, and there are no recorded deaths. With just over 2,000 observations on iNat, we felt it was fair to give them an encounter rate score of 4. So we give them a final danger score of 13. But there are other rattlesnakes who have adapted to even more desolate habitats, and those harsh conditions have pushed them to the extreme.
This is an absolutely massive Sonoran Sidewinder, and this is easily one of the most unique rattlesnakes we get out here, but their venom is relatively standard as rattlesnakes go. The toxicity is fairly moderate. The LD50 rating is about 2.7 milligrams per kilogram, but the thing about Sidewinders is this is about as big as they get out here. And because they don't get very large, their venom yield isn't big either. They're putting out, on average, about 30 to 80 milligrams at most. They have a hemotoxic venom, but because these snakes are living out in super remote and harsh desert habitats, people aren't running into them very often. So, the Sidewinder is not really considered to be a super deadly species of rattlesnake.
Because their yield is so low, it means they can't deliver enough venom with a single bite to kill a human. So that definitely knocks their toxicity score down a bit to a 5. Of the several individuals we saw, only one Sidewinder gave us any real defensiveness, but for the most part, they were much faster to try and run away than they were to rattle or to bite. So for temperament, we can't rate them above a 4. Sidewinders are adapted for extreme ecosystems that are desolate, remote, and not frequently developed. It is possible for them to show up on a property, but for the most part, conditions are harsh enough that people aren't going to be there often, and they need to save their venom for their food. There are over 4,000 iNaturalist observations for sidewinders, but that's probably due to observer bias because they're a very cool and popular rattlesnake to find. But taking all factors into account, we have to give them an encounter rate score of 4. So overall, the Sidewinder earns a danger score of 13. Now we're down to what we consider to be the big 3, the most dangerous snakes in America. And the first one on the list should come as no surprise.
Diamondback, diamondback, no way.
Ooh, okay, let's go.
Pretty good sized one. This is an eastern diamondback rattlesnake, the largest rattlesnake species in the entire world. Now look at this. He's S-ing up a little bit, but no attempts to strike. He's not posturing and then staying here, waiting for us to get closer. He's moving off immediately. And that is something about the eastern diamondback's attitude that we've noticed working with a couple of them. They're really quick to get out of your way. Now, the eastern diamondback gets a lot of credit online for being the most dangerous snake in the United States, but we've done a whole video about why that claim probably doesn't hold up. People do not run into eastern diamondbacks very often. These are endangered snakes. They should be classified as endangered. And that is why it is so important that every single one of these animals we find, we give it the utmost respect. And there you go. In an encounter with an eastern diamondback, one of the most notorious snakes in the world, we didn't see one fang.
Simply put, a bite from an eastern diamondback would be overwhelming. Their venom is highly toxic, with an LD50 of about 1.7 milligrams per kilogram, but that's not the only reason that it's so dangerous. The thing that sets the eastern diamondback apart is how massive their venom yield actually is. With a maximum dose of 850 milligrams in a single bite, that is the largest venom yield of any rattlesnake on Earth. So there is no way we could rate their toxicity any less than a 10. Now, this is where we may start ruffling some feathers, especially if your name is Zachary Gray, but we have to be honest about the experiences we've had with EDBs. Of the multiple eastern diamondbacks that we've found, we've only had them strike at us a couple of times, so overall we give the EDB a temperament score of 5. Encounter rate is where things get interesting because there are a lot of bites attributed to eastern diamondbacks, especially historically, and they have caused a significant number of deaths. However, their populations have plummeted to the point where people are not running into them very often anymore. There are about 3,700 INAT observations of EDBs, so it is something that's possible for people to encounter, even in a backyard or a developed area, but considering how much their range and population has been reduced in modern times, we give them an encounter rate score of 6. That being said, their toxicity and their giant venom yield is something we can't ignore, so their final rating comes out to 21. Now we're left with only 2 contenders. One of these 2 is our pick for the most dangerous snake in the country, but the other one really inspired this video because so many of you pointed it out in our eastern diamondback episode.
This is the Mojave rattlesnake, the snake that we came to Arizona to find. These snakes are known to be pretty defensive, and this one is giving us a great display of that. He's postured up, neck in that S position, ready to strike if we got anywhere near him. And of course, a bite from one of these animals could be devastating. Mojaves have 2 different venom types. There's a hemotoxic population and a neurotoxic population. This individual is one of the type A rattlesnakes, the neurotoxic ones that are considered more dangerous because of the possible effects on your respiratory system. But either one of them is going to have a super destructive yield. They can put out between 50 and 90 milligrams of venom, which is more than enough to kill multiple people. They have been recorded to have an LD50 of 0.18, one of the lowest of any rattlesnakes out here. And when they bite, they do tend to inject venom. Dry bites aren't impossible, but in about 40 to 60% of cases, they will be injecting venom. And if a bite goes untreated, they have about a 30 to 40% mortality rate. There have been about 20 bites recorded in the last 10 years or so, but of all those cases, no one actually died.
so deaths from the Mojave rattlesnake aren't any more common than other species.
Mojaves are often cited as the worst snake bite to actually take in the US because it's very hard to treat due to the variation in their venom types. And when you combine that with an upper middle range venom yield of about 50 to 150 milligrams, that definitely earns them some points. So because of that, they earn a toxicity score of 9. And they're not far off in temperament either, because we found Mojaves to be extremely defensive. The one we saw postured and started rattling immediately and struck at us multiple times. I would say that was probably the most defensive snake we worked with on the whole trip. So I think it's fair to give them a temperament score of 8 overall. Now, Mojaves do contribute a fair few bites, and because their venom is so fast-acting and hard to treat, they have killed a number of people, at least 9 in modern history. They are somewhat frequently encountered. There are about 5,400 observations on INAT, and you can find areas with particularly dense populations of Mojaves. But considering that in the last 20 years there haven't been any deaths, they only get an encounter rate score of 5. That said, we have to respect just how potent these snakes actually are and how defensive they can be, so their final danger score comes out to a 22. Now, I know ranking Mojaves above eastern diamondbacks is controversial for a lot of you reptile people out there, but if you feel that way, we want to hear about it. The whole point of this project is that it's meant to be collaborative and grow and change as we get more and better information. So if you're enjoying this series, subscribe to the channel so you can help shape the future of it. But this is what we've been building to, the final snake on our list, and this is the one that has the most to consider, the infamous western diamondback rattlesnake.
This animal is still quite nervous, a little bit upset with us, and I understand. These snakes are known to be very defensive, and you can see that in his body language right now.
His neck is arched in that classic S position. He could easily strike at least 2/3 of his body length right now, so we cannot get 1 inch closer than we are without putting ourselves in harm's way.
We have to be extremely careful in this interaction because one bite from this animal could absolutely be fatal.
Their venom is hemotoxic.
If left untreated, the bite of a western diamondback has between a 10 and 20% mortality rate, one of the highest of any snakes in the country. The LD50 rating of the western diamondback is 2.2, but it's not just the toxicity alone you need to worry about, it's really the venom yield that makes them so dangerous.
An average bite from a western diamondback would put out about 200 to 300 milligrams of venom, so already easily enough to kill a human. And a fully grown adult could put out 600 milligrams or more. That's just overkill when it comes to humans, and basically anything they'd be preying on as well.
And unfortunately, the reason we have all of these numbers on hand is because this snake bites a heck of a lot of people. In fact, more than any other rattlesnake in the country.
With a highly potent hemotoxic venom, the western diamondback is already scoring big for toxicity. They earn a very respectable toxicity score of 8. Their temperament is what western diamondbacks are probably most infamous for. They're known to posture and rattle readily as soon as they're encountered. Pretty much every western diamondback we interacted with and most of the individuals we saw were defensive at some point. And when they were explosive, striking multiple times, constantly rattling, and not calming down. They're also more likely to posture defensively than try to flee in our experience, so for that reason, we have to give them a temperament score of 9. Now, their encounter rate is really what makes the western diamondback stand out from all the others. Their abundance is just off the charts, and people are running into these snakes literally all the time. They bite hundreds of people a year, 250 to 300 a year in Arizona alone. And the real total is probably in the thousands because not all bites that happen are properly recorded. Finding multiple western diamondbacks in a night is standard practice when you're out herping in the desert. We saw how many in one day? 7? Probably, 8? Yeah, 7 or 8 at least. With over 27,000 INAT observations, there's really no doubt that this is the most common rattlesnake for people to run into. Nothing else even comes close, so the western diamondback easily earns an encounter rate score of 10. So with highly toxic venom and a high venom yield, an extremely defensive temperament, and an absolutely insane encounter rate, the western diamondback earns an overall danger score of 27, blowing past the competition and giving them the title of the most dangerous snake in all of the United States.
Now, I know we just spent the last 25 minutes telling you how dangerous all of these snakes are, but we're not sharing this information to scare you or to vilify rattlesnakes. This video is meant to help people learn to coexist with these animals, because the better you understand them, the easier it is to stay safe around them. The western diamondback may have won our pick for most dangerous snake in the US, but if you disagree, let us know in the comments. That said, there's another snake that we didn't cover in this video that's pretty dangerous in their own right, because they cause more snake bites in the US than all of the rattlesnakes combined. The copperhead. To learn the full story of these infamous vipers, check out this video. And with that, we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.